The reason I wait some time before I comment on some of these incidents is to validate the information that's being provided. Because when I first heard about this incident, when it was rolling through the streets and people were talking about the incident, they said that the guy's name was Hector Aguilar. And then I find out that Hector Arreola is one individual and Mike Aguilar is one of the police officers. So it's two different people. And it just goes to show you how when you start taking in information from witnesses, bystanders, hearsay, gossip, innuendo, the facts and the details can sometimes end up lost, where you have something where you have truth and non-truth interwoven into one another, as one person has described in the past. When you start getting the truth and non-truth interwoven within one another, the facts get lost. You kind of voluntarily create a reasonable doubt on the basis that the information is being provided in a confusing way. So people don't know what to believe, and you can stir up a big controversy in the public trying to figure out what happened. And once that gossip takes its form and people start giving their opinions about what they want to believe based upon the information that's been provided, it can incredibly bias a case. It can incredibly bias a jury. It can incredibly bias the legal process and the system itself. And for decades now, Columbus, Georgia has always engaged in these types of behaviors with information. So nobody really knows what the truth is. And once nobody knows what the truth is, you can just start throwing stuff out there, and then people start forming pictures in their head about the parts that's missing. That's why I get on people's case sometimes when they're kind of filling in their own blanks. See, people tend to fill in the blanks, the missing parts, the unknowns, with what they want it to be like based upon what remains in the issue or remains in the sentence. You need to make sure you know what was meant to be in that blank before you start making comments. And so when you start documenting police reports, news reports, and you start bringing documents into the court and collecting discovery and evidence, you need to make sure that that stuff that you're bringing has validity and that it's actual fact. Because we're not here to manufacture circumstantial evidence to the benefit of one party or the other. We're supposed to look at the actual physical evidence, the stuff that can be proven, that we know for sure. Circumstantial evidence is only really supposed to come into play when there's no physical evidence to imply that the person that you believe did something did it, and you have to draw upon other means of evidence to try to piece together enough of an argument to conclude that no one else could have done it except the person that's alleged. And so you have to be careful, because there is biased journalism in this community. There is a biased policing and law enforcement system, and there is a biased law enforcement procedure. And as you can see, we have a biased system of governance coming from the city council and the mayor, who is the public safety director, because she made some statements out front implying that she was persuaded that whatever happened to this man was based upon pre-existing conditions before anybody even really knows what has transpired here for sure. And to make those kinds of comments that prematurely without knowing anything is intended to be biased. Sometimes they also do that to stir up controversy, because, to be perfectly honest with you, some of these people want to upset people to the degree that somebody lashes out at them in comments, or somebody threatens them, or somebody attacks them, and then they can make it seem like there's some type of victimization simply on the basis that they were trying to do their job. Your job is not to fill in your own blanks about facts when somebody dies. In their defense, there are a lot of people around here who are not exactly model citizens, who are not very well behaved people, who do engage in some things that aggravate circumstances. And you can't always presume that just because there's a bad outcome, that that person must have been a good person who was treated with injustice by law enforcement. However, if the actual facts and the evidence indicate that something took place that was far beyond the need or call of duty that led to somebody's loss or injury, particularly when the nature of the call can't even be justified, because they said apparently that Hector was the one that made the call for service from the police officers, and it went from him making a call for service to him basically being, the way it's described, attacked. And that cannot be left out of the equation. How did they first come into contact with him in the first place? Well, it wasn't something where Hector was running towards them, swinging on them. It wasn't something where Hector was combative in the sense that he was making a physical threat towards them. Based upon what has been reported, these officers called Hector to them or approached him in some kind of way. And at some point, one or both of them made a physical contact with this person. And we need to talk about what was within that first physical contact, because that matters. How it starts matters. Because the end is only a result of how it started in the first place. And apparently, based upon what the witnesses who claim they were there are implying, the officers came in prejudicial in the first place, because it didn't seem like anybody asked who he was, in the sense that they were checking on his personal welfare to see if he was okay or if he needed service. It seemed like he was somebody that was known to them, that was already on their radar, and they had certain biases against him based upon what's being reported by the people who claim they watched it. I'm suspicious of this person who provided the testimony. And I'm suspicious of the person that lived across the street who's biased because they're another person in the law enforcement system. Because I've lived in neighborhoods where they strategically place corrections officers, police officers, sheriff deputies, or other informants or members of the court that spy for the neighborhood as the neighborhood watchman, the neighborhood police. Some of them even do it for the alderman or the council person for that district. Now, he said that things like that don't usually happen in that area, meaning that there was some prejudice about the fact that a Latino or a person of color was in that neighborhood. He said he was fighting like a bull in a china shop, one of the witnesses alleged. What does someone being killed have to do with China in the first place? So when you're listening to somebody speak like that about other people out in the open, it's prejudicial. When you hear a person telling you detail for detail what they allege happened, but then there are other parts of the testimony that says, well, I couldn't see it. Why are you providing testimony factually that you claim you saw something, and then you're coming back and saying you didn't see something? So you only saw part of it. You don't really know all of what took place. And so what are you defending the officers for, only the officers, if you don't know entirely what happened? We have a presumption that every time we hear that a person is in an altercation with officers, that person is fighting with the officers. Some officers come in and converge upon people. You have two or more officers pulling on this person, both of them making orders against that person. So one person can be pulling you right, one person can be pulling you left, another person can be pushing you forward, another person can be pushing you backwards at the same time, with all of them shouting different orders. When that person goes into excited delirium, an agitated state, you can lose track of your faculty to reason, because people are in fear of police officers now because they know that they might lose their life or become fatally injured. Now, when a person goes into excited delirium, nobody's working on what to do to reduce that panic. That panic can be in complete, absolute fear and terror for something that has transpired or some previous incident. We don't even know. We haven't even considered that. Now, they're making it look like anger retaliatory, where this guy was just a hothead. He was asked to comply. He didn't want to cooperate, and the officers did what they had to do to bring him into compliance. They also tried to make it seem like it's intermittent explosive disorder, saying that this person had a bad temper. All you have to do is do any little thing and he'll lose his cool. And to be perfectly honest with you, there are prejudicial things that can be done to induce the appearance of such things. Now, let me be clear about something. If a person tells you that they need some service because they think somebody might be trying to kill them, that might very well be true. This is a dangerous community. Now, there are people that fabricate claims, embellish claims. But I am telling you, there are people that are threatening and endangering people around here all the time. It's not impossible. You don't really know what was going on. And I was notified and informed by a professional that, see, the dead can't defend themselves. They can't speak for themselves. We don't know what Hector's version of what transpired is because they killed him. And now they're trying to make it seem like it was a justified kill. And from what I have heard thus far, he did not have a weapon. And if he didn't have a weapon, how the hell did he end up dead? How the hell did he end up injured that badly? Now, I have seen people fight just like Mr. Tarvin has described with police officers. It's not impossible that there was no reaction by Hector. But was it entirely his fault? If a person walks up and violates a citizen in blue and punches them in the head or something, does that person not have a right to respond to that if they don't know why you're injuring them like that? Or if they're trying to prevent themselves from being further injured? I had a police officer here, squad 692, walk up and just pull a weapon out on me for absolutely no reason at all. I've had several police officers pull out deadly firearms, willing to harm me for nothing, refusing to even work the call. I know this stuff happens. I have seen neighbors, bystanders, criminals even, standing around providing false witness testimony intentionally, collectively. I have seen neighbors wait on the block that didn't see anything, claiming that they heard something and nobody was even talking. I have seen somebody literally manufacture a story from the time that they made up the story to the time they call the police officers and stick with it. I had a woman attack me a few weeks ago, a random person. I don't even know her. She was under the influence of cocaine and alcohol. And I walked away from her 2 or 3 times and she kept on coming back. And so I grabbed her and I slammed her on her back is what I did. Because I'm not going to risk somebody injuring me. People have been stabbed and injured in some major ways. And I guess by me telling her, get away from me, and trying to move away from her, I guess she thought that she was intimidating me. I guess she thought that she was going to get away with that. And I told her one last time, I said, if you keep on putting your hands on me, I'm going to stop you. And I did. She called the police after going to get her guy, trying to get him to fight with me. And it didn't work. She was already bruised up when she came there. She went and told these people that somebody did something to her in a way that never occurred. She was the actual aggressor. And the people that came from the EMT and the fire department, they weren't listening to me. Fortunately, I had a responsible professional police officer who came into that scene. And to my blessing and to my gratitude, he used to be an EMT. And a person that's an EMT knows when they see some fresh wounds. If I wanted to hurt her, it would have been easy. When I'm talking about hurt her, if I wanted to injure her, it would have been easy and it would have been justified because she really wasn't even supposed to be on the property. It was public intoxication. She was creating a disturbance at a residence while trying to pretend that she was there to visit one of her friends. But all they were really doing was going there to use crack. They were going in there to drink. They were going in there to buddy up and team up to try to set somebody up with a domestic violence charge. And yes, I slammed her on her back hard because there was no other way to stop her. I braced her in a way so that she wouldn't be injured like badly. But I did what I had to do to stop the imminent threat that was coming towards me, because she was punching and she was kicking repeatedly, even when I walked away. So if a person continues to attack you after you've walked away from them 3 times and they don't even know you, because I didn't even know her name, you have every right to defend yourself. Now, these officers are alleging somebody did something similar in the case of Hector Arreola. And I'm trying to figure out why more than one officer could not bring one person into compliance without killing them. And for these people to be claiming that some type of pre-existing medical condition contributed to those kinds of injuries, it really is insane. And I'm disappointed in some of the attorneys in this community who know people have been faced with this stuff a long time, and they only show up when somebody's injured, or they only show up when somebody's dead, which is part of their job. But the other part of being given the privilege of being an attorney is to neutralize and assist people that you know are being violated, to keep the system honest. Not just bring more cases into your office to pay yourself. You're supposed to balance it out. And I'm not saying anybody exploited anybody here. I'm just saying the attorneys in this community have known this kind of stuff has been going on. They plant specific people to be backup sources for police officers in every neighborhood, just like this Tarvin guy, just like the one across the street. That's their third eye. And you can go down to the neighborhoods where the black people are. They have an informant planted in every neighborhood. And sometimes the informant is the biggest criminal in the neighborhood. Think about that. So they will set you up sometime. Criminals making other people look criminal. Now, I want somebody to explain to me how this person ended up in that kind of condition at that level, if people were really just trying to bring someone into compliance. Now, this woman that I described that did that, because they do stuff like that in Columbus. She's a transient. She's a homeless person. She's mentally ill. Now she's getting a check maybe, and she's living with somebody, but she's a transient person. And they want you to look like not only did you do something bad, but you did something to a woman. And some of these women are crazy enough to be willing to take a black eye, be bloodied, hurt, or injured to claim that somebody has done something to them. But I'm going to ask you the other question again. How did she come into contact with me in the first place? Because she's not even anybody that I would say hello to. And that's where your question comes in. How did this officer come into contact with Hector in the first place? I can assure you that if some of the major families and stakeholders had a child in this kind of situation, particularly if they were calling upon law enforcement to protect their mother, if the Bradleys, the Woodruffs, the Bickerstaffs, or some of these other families here, the Scarboroughs, the Amoses, the Turners, if somebody called for support for their mother, I can assure you they wouldn't end up dead by the time people left that scene. And so why do we keep seeing these recurring incidents? And again, in defense of those families, in defense of the law enforcement system itself, there are some people who do some crazy stuff around here. But the people who actually do the things that endanger people, the people that should be policed to prevent things from escalating to this point, they refuse to do anything about. And they keep going after innocent people to make public examples of them. You never know who might be the person responsible for setting up or causing somebody's injury or death. It could be a friend. It could be a church member. It could be a relative. It could be a lover. It could be an enemy that's within the force from the same race. All that stuff is going on here. And we need to keep this in perspective. And the reason that I went so far and went so in depth on this particular piece in the beginning, when the case is still open and fresh, is because we need to rethink how we're looking at these cases when they arise. And how much credit and credence do we give to it? See, they fear that if people pursued actions against the city for all this injustice, it would bankrupt the city legally. And the one way to prevent that is to stop mistreating people, stop harming people. But how else are you going to cover up something that you already know is wrong if you don't try to do something to get rid of the problem? And sometimes people are injured, murdered, to try to silence them. What happened to Hector Aguilar? Who else knows what happened in that scene? Were there any other witnesses or bystanders? What other information is there available? And is it credible? I want to say that again. If there's any other information in that scene, if there were other witnesses or testimony, is that information that they're providing credible? Because some people really are anti-government, anti-cop, and they'll say anything to get a police officer or somebody else in trouble. But when the governance itself is doing something to citizens that it wouldn't want done to itself as a governance, something is wrong.